Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I've got to tell you, this Brooklyn situation is getting more uncomfortable by the minute. Just when it seemed like she and Chase had finally found a little peace, that old accident is coming back around, and I have a feeling Brooklyn is about to discover that secrets never stay buried forever. Sooner or later, they come knocking. What really catches my attention is that Brooklyn is not hiding the secret because she does not love Chase. Quite the opposite. She wants the life they have built together. She wants her husband, her family, and a happy home with Phoebe. After everything they have been through, she finally has something that feels worth protecting. But sometimes, in trying so hard to protect the people we love, we make choices that put everything at risk. Brooklyn believes she was the other driver involved in that infamous accident with Jordan and Curtis. Instead of telling Chase the whole truth, she and Tracy decided to keep it quiet. At the time, I can imagine Brooklyn telling herself that she was protecting her family. Maybe she thought the secret would eventually fade away. Maybe she believed that if nobody found out, everybody could move forward. Well, life doesn't usually work that way, does it? That guilt has been sitting on Brooklyn's shoulders for a long time, and now it is becoming harder for her to carry. I think that is one of the most interesting parts of this story. Brooklyn may be keeping a straight face around Chase, but inside, she knows exactly what is at stake. Every question he asks about the accident probably feels like another knock on the door of a secret she desperately wants to keep locked away. And Chase is making matters much worse for her without even knowing it. He is not looking at this as a husband trying to uncover his wife's secret. As far as Chase knows, he is simply doing his job. There are unanswered questions surrounding the accident, and he wants to understand what really happened. That is exactly the kind of thing I expect from Chase. Once something bothers him, he is not going to just say, well, I guess we'll never know. No, sir. He is going to keep digging. That is where the real danger begins. The closer Chase gets to the truth, the harder it becomes for Brooklyn to control the situation. She cannot simply tell him to stop investigating without making herself look suspicious. She cannot suddenly change her story without raising even more questions. And she certainly cannot keep pretending that everything is fine if Chase starts uncovering evidence that points back toward her. Honestly, I think the emotional pressure may be even more dangerous than the investigation itself. Brooklyn has already broken one important promise to Chase, the promise that they would be honest with each other. That may sound like a small thing compared with everything that happens in Port Charles, but in a marriage, those little cracks can become huge problems. Trust is not something you can put back together with a quick apology once it has been shattered. And that is why I keep thinking about what happens when Chase finally learns the truth. Imagine being Brooklyn and realizing that your husband did not hear the truth from you. He had to discover it himself. That would hurt Chase on a completely different level. He may be angry about the accident, but I suspect the bigger wound would be knowing that Brooklyn looked him in the eye every day and chose not to tell him. That is a tough pill to swallow. I also cannot ignore Tracy's role in all of this. Brooklyn did not carry this secret completely by herself. Tracy was involved in helping keep the truth hidden, and that means Brooklyn has another problem if everything starts falling apart. Once Chase begins asking the right questions, people who helped cover up the truth may have to start protecting themselves. And we all know how quickly things can unravel in Port Charles. One person says too much. Someone else gets nervous. A piece of evidence suddenly appears. Then, before you know it, the whole story starts coming apart like an old sweater. That's what I think could happen here. Brooklyn may believe she still has control over the situation, but she may be underestimating just how close Chase already is to finding the truth. The timing makes this even more painful because Brook, Lynn, and Chase are finally in a place where their relationship can breathe again. They have a family, they have Phoebe, they have a future they can actually look forward to, and now this old mistake is threatening to walk right through the front door. For me, that is what makes this storyline more than just another mystery involving an accident. It is really a test of Brooklyn's marriage. She has to decide how much longer she can keep protecting a secret that is slowly destroying her from the inside. Because there is a big difference between protecting your family and protecting yourself from the consequences of your own choices. Brooklyn may have convinced herself that keeping quiet was the best thing she could do for Chase and their family. But Chase may see it very differently when he finally understands what happened. He could feel betrayed, embarrassed, and deeply hurt. And if he starts wondering what else Brooklyn has been hiding, then the damage could go far beyond this one accident. That's the part that worries me for her. Once Chase stops trusting her, every explanation Brook Lynn gives could sound suspicious. Even the things she tells him honestly might suddenly come under a cloud of doubt. That is how secrets destroy relationships, not always with one huge explosion, but with 1,000 little questions. And I have to say, I don't think Brook Lynn is going to be able to avoid this forever. Chase is already looking deeper into the accident, and Brook Lynn is already carrying too much guilt. Put those two things together, and something is bound to give. The only question is whether Brook Lynn will finally tell Chase the truth herself, or whether he will uncover it on his own. Personally, I would much rather see Brook Lynn come clean before Chase catches her in the lie. It would not erase what she did, but at least it would give her a chance to explain why she made those choices. If Chase discovers everything through an investigation, though, I think the emotional damage will be much harder to repair. And that's why I am keeping my eye on Chase right now. He thinks he is simply following the evidence, but every step he takes could bring him closer to the woman standing at the center of this secret. Brook Lynn may still believe she has time, but I am not so sure. Sometimes the truth does not need to be chased. Sometimes it is already standing right beside you, waiting for you to finally notice it. If Chase does discover the truth, I honestly don't think anyone should be surprised. This is a soap opera, after all, and secrets have a funny way of finding the light eventually. The deeper Chase digs into the accident, the more likely he is to find something that does not quite add up. And once that happens, Brook Lynn may not have anywhere left to hide. But here is where I think things get really interesting. The biggest problem is not necessarily the accident itself. Brook Lynn may not have actually done anything wrong. The accident was Jordan's fault, and BLQ did not even know what had really happened until much later. So if Chase discovers that Brook Lynn was involved, I don't think the accident alone is what will destroy their marriage. The real problem is the lie. Brook Lynn has been keeping this from Chase for months. These two promised each other that they would be honest, and that promise meant something. They were trying to rebuild their relationship on trust, yet Brook Lynn quietly held on to something that could completely change the way Chase looks at her. That's the part that hurts. I can understand why Brook Lynn is scared. She has a family now, and she has worked hard to build a life with Chase. She probably keeps telling herself that staying quiet is protecting him. But sooner or later, you have to ask yourself whether you're really protecting someone or simply protecting yourself from the consequences of telling the truth. Brook Lynn has wanted to confess more than once. She has had opportunities to come clean, but Tracy kept talking her out of it. Tracy believed that telling Chase the truth would cause more harm than good. And sure, I understand the thinking. Tracy has never exactly been the type to panic when a little trouble comes knocking. But I'm not convinced she was right this time. Because every day Brook Lynn keeps this secret, the eventual confession becomes harder. If she had told Chase at the beginning, he might have been angry, but at least he would have known she trusted him enough to tell him the truth. Now, if Chase finds out through his own investigation, he may feel like he was the last person in the room to know what was really going on. And that is a painful place for a husband to be. There is another detail that makes this whole thing even more complicated. We cannot even say with complete certainty that Brook Lynn was the other driver. There were plenty of cars on that road that night. Isaiah could have been involved. Charlotte could have been there. Danny could have been there. There could have been dozens or even hundreds of people whose identities have never been fully connected to what happened. And if Brook Lynn finally sits down with Chase and tells him everything, maybe there is still a path forward. It may be messy, it may be painful, and it certainly won't be fixed overnight, but at least they would finally be dealing with the same truth. Because when it comes to marriage, I believe a hard truth is usually easier to survive than a beautiful lie. So if Brook Lynn is going to confess, I say she should do it now. Better late than never. The longer she waits, the more dangerous this secret becomes. And if Chase has to discover it himself, I'm afraid the lie may hurt him far more than the truth ever could.